First thing we will be discussing is the end of the journey of the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill through the House of Lords. All the amendments have done their thing, been voted on, and we are now approaching report stage, which I believe is the 9th. Is that correct, Alison?
Yes, it's the 9th. It's on Monday. It's called the third reading, and it's just a nod through, really, and then it goes off to House of Commons. The third reading is officially the chance for the Lords to tidy up a bill, but quite frankly, everything will just get a nod and it'll go off.
Yes, and there should be a most recent published version of the bill available now on the parliamentary website so that you can go and have a look and see what that version looks like as it is coming out of the House of Lords. It does not mean that this is the end of the bill yet. There's still things that we can be doing because it now goes into ping pong. Randall, do you want to talk a little bit about ping pong? What happens there?
Yeah, I think its proper title is something like consideration of amendments, but everybody calls it ping pong. It only debates any changes to a bill that have been made since that House last had a look at it. So the first part of back in the Commons will be looking at all the amendments that were put in prior to or during, that went in consequently of the committee stage, which was way back now. It was back in May and ran through into September, and also more recently in report stage. Now, the ones that won't get debated in much depth will be the government ones. And if there are things there that concern you, like the home visits, well, then that's a good thing to contact your MP about and tell them you are concerned about this. And particularly if they're listening to home educators, make sure they know so at least they can talk to it. The government ones which have been made will go through without much debate otherwise. Things like Baroness Barron's amendment, the ones that have come from other members of the House besides the government, will get more debate, and they are the ones that are more likely to get taken out. I don't think the government will allow Barron's amendment about extending to Section 17 children who've been referred as children in need under Section 17 will be allowed to be left in the bill. It would just cause too big a workload at this stage for local authorities. So that will probably get taken out. And if it does, and with any other amendments that get taken out, like social media bans, telephone in schools bans, if they get rejected in the Commons, the bill will have to then come back to the House of Lords for them to consider the changes that the Commons have made. And if they disagree with those changes, they can remake them or they can adjust them slightly to make them more palatable. And then the bill will go back to the Commons. And this is why it's called ping pong. Eventually, after several rounds, if the Lords are being awkward, the Commons can throw its weight around and says, you have to accept it this time, or we'll bring in another act, and the Lords will. But it's only when that process, and we have no idea how long it will take. We're obviously interested in a few amendments that have gone through about children not in school registers, but at the same time, there's lots of others that have been made to other parts of the bill. I can't see them doing the first round of ping pong in a day. It might take 2 or 3 days. I have absolutely no idea when they will start it. One thing to bear in mind that might have an effect on it, at third reading, if you've looked at the amendments, there are 2 amendments in there concerning Wales. And there was meant to be a debate and a vote in Wales at the beginning of this week to give legislative permission for Wales to be included. Now, that vote got delayed because members of the Senate realised there was going to be these 2 amendments put into the bill, and they said, how can we give permission to something we don't know what it says? That appears to be what went on, and so they're now going to debate it at the beginning of March. The government don't have to wait till then to start ping pong, but they might decide to, or they might say, well, we're not going to get to that part till ping pong, so it doesn't matter. Or they might simply say, these aren't going to be rejected because they're government amendments, so we'll just carry on. But there is a possibility of delay in ping pong. I don't know how long it will take, but given everything, all the signs are they want this bill through before maybe Easter, or certainly before Commons adjourns. No, it doesn't adjourn, but what does adjourn, the Welsh Senedd has got elections for new members of Senate and a new government, and they adjourn on the 8th of April, a month before the elections, and they might want it all wrapped up for Wales to have in its inbox by then. But that's the process. Only debating the things that have been changed by the other house. The second and third rounds of ping pong will be quicker than the first one.
Do you think there's scope, Randall, for if people write to their MPs about this bill, about the amendments that Baroness Smith added around home education and the registers, do you think there's scope for where an MP might call out on one of those if people write to the MPs and ask them to raise it?
I would encourage them to do it. I would encourage them, and particularly about the obnoxious things, the things like almost mandatory home visits. Those, especially, or if you've got Conservative MPs, write to them about that and say this is going too far. If you've got a Labour MP, let's use Barron's amendment as the excuse for that and say this isn't unworkable and things, so that they are at least hearing something they can get behind. And that may help people to build up a relationship with the Labour MPs or even the Green ones.
So we will be, at the end of this session, we will talk about some actions that you can take, what you can do about all of these things. So we will come back to some of that a bit later. I know you can go and read Fiona Nicholson's Ed Yourself page. It's keeping things up to date. So if you want the latest, do go and follow her blog for the latest information about that, where she explains it in a really clear way. The other big thing that has really got a lot of home educators really, really angry this week is Keir Starmer made a speech in Hastings yesterday. And there was only just a couple of lines that he said about home education. He didn't even call it home education, he called it homeschooling. And these lines, for anyone who is listening and paying attention, are somewhat offensive to us as a home educating community. Now, Randall's going to just talk a little bit about that and why we should be concerned about what Starmer is saying.
Yeah, there's a link will come up later to where the speech can be found. It's written out very strangely. It looks to me like Downing Street now cannot turn teleprompt language into English and put it into paragraphs. So what you see there is a line-by-line version of the speech as Starmer was reading it off the teleprompt. And the 3 lines in we're talking about, it says, it means tougher regulation of home schooling because schools are so important for integration. And so we need a higher bar for people who want to opt out of that responsibility. Now, what does that really mean? Well, first of all, you've got to see the context. It was part of his third point in his speech, and that begins, we need to be more vigilant in asserting British values. And then he went on about calling out those who want to divide us, whoever they are. And he talks about hard right, far right ideologies and Muslim ideologies. Doesn't mention left-wing ideologies, but there's those around as well. And he talks about racial hatred and racial communications. He talks about the Palestinian state. And then he gets to a point and he says, and so frankly, we do need to be much clearer as a society about what we expect of people and the responsibilities that come with rights. That means much stronger powers for the Charity Commission to shut down the charities that promote extremism. And there has been some argument in the media about the charities that are funding extremism, either financially or in thought. So that was his first thing. And then his second thing which kind of came out of the blue. I wasn't really expecting him to mention home education at all on this occasion. It means tougher regulation of homeschooling, as I read earlier. And then it talks about making sure everybody learns English. And that's the general drift. So what's he going about? Where has this come from in the flow of things? Well, those of us who are long in the tooth like me are very aware that this accusation of homeschooling being connected with extremism isn't new. Homeschooling loophole sends children into the hands of extremists, Ofsted Chief Warm. That is from 2017. And if I remember rightly, it was talk like this that got Education Otherwise to do some research into extremism and home education. The next one from the following year, from 2018, was the one that really caused problems, that half of extremists take children out of school. That was rather famous because it was a deputy chief inspector in the police of the extremism branch that made that claim, but there's never been any evidence sent for it. But there's a building narrative that home education is used by extremists. And finally, the third one, a Daily Mail article. This is from 2019. Parents who homeschool their children will be forced to sign a register to protect them. It doesn't say whether that's the parents or the children, by the way, from extremist indoctrination. This has been behind everything that's been going on for nearly 10 years now. This linking of home education with extremism. But what's it going on about? Well, I'm rather thankful to Starmer for what he said, because he has now spilt the beans. He's now put it in big signs. It means tougher regulation for homeschooling. Why? Because schools are so important for integration. I recognize something in that statement, which I'll come to in a minute. But what's he saying is schools are where children are taught to think the same, all taught to value each other. That's good, equally. But it also means to think as the state wants you to think. Schools have long been means of social engineering, and Starmer is spelling it out here. And so we need a higher bar for people who want to opt out of that responsibility. Starmer is saying if you do not send your child to school, you are in danger of putting them on the margin and not letting them become members of society. Now, I dispute that. I think schools have problems in helping people to become members of society. And on the whole, home education, as the most diverse community of communities I know of. But this message, if you want to see more of it, back in 2020, President Macron of France, and what's he got to do with it? Well, Macron actually spelt out what the motivation behind this really is. On the 2nd of October in 2020, Macron gave a speech, and there is a link to it, on separatism in France. And if you read it, and there's an extract from it, because if lower down the page, there's a PDF of the whole bit there. That's the PDF. And the third area of focus for him was strategy in schools. And he talks about very similar things, but at greater length to what Starmer has said. He says schools completely protect our children in the face of all religious symbols. Religion, this is their translation. They are central to the notion of secularism. They are where we form conscience for that children become free, rational citizens to be able to choose their own destinies. Schools are therefore a collective treasure. They make it possible to build the republic that we share. Like Starmer, Macron has this high view of schools as being the bedrock of a unified society. And then he talks about how many children in France, which at that time was 50,000, who were being homeschooled, as he called it. It's actually family education in France. And he says too many children coming out. And he obviously doesn't want to use the word Muslim, but all the examples he gives are, and his punchline in there, he complains about illegal schools, and then he says that what we're going to do, we're going to make school mandatory for children from the age of 3. And that was then implemented in 2022. It took him under a year to get the bill through the French Parliament and there. But can you see that Macron has this vision of schools as the centre of social engineering?
Yeah.
And in that sense, this is what Starmer's talking about. If you want to understand what Starmer's on about, you have to set it in this setting. And I'm glad he said it, because this has been the underlying agenda for a long time against home education. The current bill and its predecessor in the Human Rights Memo clearly states that the Department for Education, for social cohesion purposes, has every right to insist that children attend school. It isn't just about whether you're safeguarding your children by giving them a good education. Starmer makes it clear in those 3 lines what the government want is all children to be safeguarded, to be taught by being taught what the government wants them to think and how the government wants them to think. And it is a real clear signal that this is what's going on. So just one final illustration. It is an illustration, but I don't have it to hand. In Juliet's home country of South Africa, there's been a bill that's, I think, now gone through, that is bringing restrictions on home educators. And in the early days, there was a wonderful cartoon that was produced of children sat at a desk in a row, and they've got different speech bubbles, and the teacher's coming along with a pair of scissors and cutting those speech bubbles into the same shaped rectangles. That is what they're wanting to do. They're wanting to impress on all children the same values by pushing them into school. It will never work because people aren't like that, but it does work to some extent. And that is what we're up against. And if you want to signal, I said earlier, I don't think Baroness Barron's bill will go through. But when you look at the way she's thinking, she's paving the ground for those things to come in the future.
The interesting thing is, I was looking back at these other articles that you shared from 2017 and 2018 or 2019, what it was. And when you I was already skimming down the reading, and it's interesting that they get produced at the time of Lord Soley putting his bill out. And you find that these articles come out at times, particularly when so it's no accident that Keir Starmer has said this. It probably has a lot to do with the fact that the bill is at a critical stage now again as it leaves the House of Lords. It's planting that seed once again that home educating parents are to be treated with suspicion. I did notice that the one article you shared about extremists, they were talking about how half of extremists take their children out of school. And then when you look at the article, it's 70 extremists and 35 of them took their children out of school. So we're still talking but they make such a big headline of this, but we'll take that and make it blow it up out of proportion. Now, it kind of segues into one of the other things we wanted to share. There's an article that's come out just this week as well in The Sun, and yes, it is The Sun, so you can take it as you will. But look at this headline, and you get an idea of why this is being shared right now. My mum's threatening to kill me inside the hidden homeschooling epidemic, leaving thousands of kids at risk of abuse. It's sensationalism at its absolute worst. But once again, this is coming at a time, it is a sign in a way of desperation that the government really wants to hammer home that home education is nasty and we don't want it. If you scroll down, you will see there's a great big image of the stepmom and the dad to really make out that these parents are, just to drive home that parents are not in a good, not good at taking care of their kids. And it's a really nasty article, and I know many of you will be very, very angered by it. They talk about parents. Look at the terminology, the word they use: parents blocking home check. That's not what parents are doing. They're not blocking home checks, because home checks are, first of all, not a thing and shouldn't be a thing unless there's any evidence to suggest it's needed. But this is the kind of thing we are dealing with at the moment, because it is to basically silence our voices, to silence the voices that are saying home education is a positive thing. Children need the option to be able to home educated. They do give a couple of cases of children that have called into Childline, and obviously I'm very, very sympathetic if children are in a bad way, or if parents are pulling their children out of school without a thought of home educating. That should be dealt with, but in a whole different way. But we need to be aware that these headlines are not without something behind them and somebody prompting the newspaper to print this.
We definitely believe this is a Department for Education plant. It's effectively a press release that's not a press release that's been given to the newspaper. Also, if you go through every case that's mentioned in here, for example, a 13-year-old girl saying that she's a young carer for her mum who's disabled. Well, if she's a young carer, then children's social care will already be aware of her. And there are safeguarding things that can be done there. Also, these children have rung Childline. They're not hidden. They're not invisible. They've rung Childline. Every single one of the children they talk about is a child who's been removed from school. So they're not children who are not known to local authorities. And the things they're talking about are safeguarding issues that are nothing to do with home education whatsoever. The language within it is really, really awful. The Sun has found online forums where parents actively encourage others to stop local authority officials from checking in on their children's learning environment. I mean, there's about 43 wrong things right there. Every word in that sentence appears to have.
Yes. Because also they've said things like to calling home education an epidemic negative puts it in a negative light as well. So it's really important to even though these articles make you angry, it is important to engage with them. And if you can, write a letter to the editor to address and to correct some of these misconceptions.
Two things about this article. It's actually putting together of two things. You may remember that in October or November, the NSPCC did a report.
Yeah.
But first, all this about Childline is taken out of that report.
It is.
If not directly, by speaking to the authors and getting some more background, but it's all taken out of that report. The second bit is there's quite a lot in there by the Children's Commissioner.
Yep.
And she's lobbying for even more things. So it may be Department for Education, technically, or it might be Children's Commissioner. But as she's based in the Department for Education's building, we know what we're talking about, right? It's basically a lobbying piece. You have to remember that editors like to be getting on well with the government and the civil service. They don't like to be upsetting them. That's why they won't carry positive stories about home educators. They only want the negative ones because they know which side of their bread is buttered on. But do write in to the Sun. If people mention it to you, don't be frightened to defend it. This report done by the NSPCC was really lobbying for more funds for local government, because what the councils are frightened of, they're going to have all these new responsibilities, and the Department for Education are actually saying, well, you've got nothing, you'll have no extra work to do, so we're not going to give you that much extra money. And so there's a battle going on even within government. And there's a lot of lobbying going on here. What surprises me is, given where the bill's at, and unless there are major political earthquakes, and right now there's a lot of major earth tremors going on in the political circles, unless there's major political earthquakes, then this bill's going to go through, barring a collapse of government, really. That is what it seems like. So this is actually saying for the next round, they want to jack it up even more. It's a pathetic article. It is there to panic the public into siding with the government. Whether somebody, after Starmer opened his mouth yesterday, said we need to get something out, so that could well have been set up to back up Starmer's words at that point.
Yes, I do feel like Starmer's also trying to distract from some of his other battles that he's in at the moment. just also to point out that, as I said, this is the Sun, and I feel like the Sun has been specifically chosen because they don't mind using the sensational language, whereas other papers may be more measured. We have to be looking at this and reading through carefully, reading between the lines. And as Alison said, if these children were in school, they're actually already known to local authorities. And if a local authority is doing their job, just they can stay perfectly within the bounds of the law and still see when things are not quite right. So just to bear in mind with these kinds of articles, and to respond and try and bring some balance to it by writing to the editor, or engaging if they have it online somewhere where you can add comments, and perhaps you can help sort that faulty thinking out. Alison, you're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with SEND reforms.
Okay, so the SEND reforms, it's a confused picture, as it usually is, because we have to remember that everything this government has done has been complicated. It's involved politics via media rather than politics via the established mechanisms in Parliament. Much of it's not evidence-based. They don't listen to people. They use very confusing language, etc., etc. So here they're talking about, for example, digital passports. There's several articles been published in the last couple of days on the SEND reforms, but a lot of them are sort of best guesses based on hints. This one talks about digital passports, which are, it's not, don't link this to the digital ID. Digital passport, basically that's a profile of a child within a school, and what their needs may be. Most secondary schools already have digital passports for children with SEND, but I've heard such things as, oh, we can't show them to all the teachers because that would be invading their privacy, rather than we ought to show them to all the teachers because then all the teachers will understand what their needs are. There's a lot of bluster in here. There's a lot of news about trying to reduce the special school places, or at least not increase them. They've stopped the special school building programme, which we were all very much looking forward to because we've been desperate for places for years. And there's this idea that they are going to amalgamate a good chunk of the special needs pupils into the mainstream environment, which of course has become more and more hostile to special needs children. No acknowledgement that the whole system just needs a bloody good overhaul, and that's it really. So there's not very much news really, and a lot of it's just guff and sort of half-hearted promises about, you know, we are listening to people and stuff like that.
I mean, there's a lot going on. I do fear that if this bill goes through and they mess with the old SEND situation with the EHCPs and so on, I think that the system is possibly going to implode. I don't think we're heading in any good direction, though.
Well, they're talking about introducing a new level. Now, it's not a new level, it's reintroducing an old level. We used to have school action plus, and statements, and now we have SEND and HCP.
Yeah.
So they're talking about introducing a level where there would be some money attached. So at the moment, if you have a child who, let's say they're dyslexic and they've got ADHD, but they don't reach the criteria for having an EHCP, then you don't get any money for them at all. So money only follows the EHCP.
Yeah.
They're talking about introducing a middle tier where there will be some money for those children. I don't think that's such a bad idea, but I think there's an awful lot needs to happen before we've got schools that are comfortable for SEND children. I truly believe that if we made all educational establishments autism, ADHD, neurodiversity friendly, we would do no harm whatsoever to people who are neurotypical, and we would do a great deal of good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, so what can you do as a parent who's listening to all of this? We know the bill is now coming towards possibly the end of its journey, and we don't know whether we can make much more impact. But as I've been saying regularly, it ain't over till the fat lady sings, and I didn't do any singing yet. So
and Juliet, we were talking about what you shouldn't be doing as well. And what you shouldn't be doing is personally attacking MPs who are actually just doing their job.
Yes,
do not make it personal.
Yes, we have to be careful about our tone and not becoming a kind of like baying dogs. And I know people are upset and angry, but we maybe just need to use our words a bit more carefully.
We undermine our own argument. We undermine our own argument if we go down that route.
Yes, we need to maintain the moral high ground and so on, because there's nothing wrong with what we're doing and we are in the right. So Here's an action you can do right now because Valentine's Day is coming up very soon. Now, some of you may remember our Christmas card campaign. So what we've done is we've designed a few Valentine's cards so that you can send your MP a love message. And they've got different messages like have a heart this Valentine's Day. And on the inside, there is a message to say, and speak out now to get the children's well-being and schools bill scrapped. Yes to children's well-being, no to the children's well-being and schools bill. And then there's two other designs. Now we will be sharing with you a link, and it is shared in the action group. There's a link to a Google folder. So if you go and look on the action group for the post about the Valentine's Day action, you look in the comments, there's a link to a Google folder. In that Google folder, there are 3 different card designs for the outside and the inside. And then there's also instructions on how you can use these. So there's a couple of different ways you can use it. One is you can use like Moonpig or Funky Pigeon or one of those, and you upload your message on. This one is Dear MP, I would love it if you, and then it's if you would act now to get the children's wellbeing and schools bill scrapped. Okay, so you can let me just go back to the first page of that card. I'm wondering if I've got a typo. I would love it if you, if you would. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, I'm just checking my own.
When Juliet says we have designed, that would be the royal we.
Yeah. So you can upload these designs onto Moonpig or Funky Pigeon, but I would suggest that if you've got space in the card to add your own message, such as to mention parts of the bill that you dislike. So maybe just choose 1 or 2 things and explain why a home visit, for instance, wouldn't work for many children and that kind of thing. So don't make it long, keep it simple, but choose 1 or 2 things and add that into this message. If you don't want to use these designs, make your own. Or you can print these ones out and send them in the post if you don't want to do it through Moonpig or these other ones that I've mentioned. Or make your own. Get your kids to make their own with your message in it and send them off to your MP. This is just an idea, and it's about a way to be creative in protesting and lobbying our MPs. If they already had a Christmas card for you, I bet you they will have a bit of a laugh when they get a Valentine's Day card from you as well. It'll put a smile on their face that, gee, will these guys really stop at nothing? And the truth is, yes, we will really stop at nothing. You can use these designs. So the way to do them is you download them onto your computer and then you upload them into that whichever platform you're going to use. And then you need to get your MP's address and pay for it to be posted to that address. But there's different ways. Print them off, make your own. So if you look in this Google Drive, Google folder, there's also some instructions. So it tells you exactly what you need to do. So there's some instructions on how to carry out this action. So please get creative and do something nice. Send a little love to your MP in the hope that he will send us some love back. There's no harm to be done. But if you're not feeling loving, write him a letter about this bill, about the stage that we're going into, the ping pong stage. Write him a letter and use that opportunity as well. It doesn't need to be a Valentine's Day message. There are certain amendments that are more offensive to us than the others that affect us directly. We are also going to probably have a template letter out for you soon that you can send to your MP as well if you're not sure how to do that. So what are some of the other actions? The other actions: go on social media, continue to raise awareness, comment on posts by the DFE, write to Keir Starmer. There are quite a few people that are writing to Keir Starmer about this comment that he made, about the speech that he made. Another action you can do is to write to leaders of the different political parties and ask them, as a leader of a political party that's meant to represent you, what are they doing about these things that are being said and done and put into law that are not going to actually help you as a parent and be supportive to you as a family. So be very clear and get your letters out. Don't give up yet. It's not time to give up yet. Let nobody accuse you of giving up too soon. And get your children involved as well, because they do keep saying that the children's voice is important. So if you can get your children to. Is there any other actions you can think of, Randall or Alison?
It's surprising how many parents don't know about the bill, full stop. They don't understand the issues about the single unique identifier, which, by the way, is now clause 5 in the new edition of the bill. It's not clause 4, and everything's moved on quite a lot. So if you are writing about anything, make sure you use the references in the copy of the bill the MPs will pick up, which is the new one. But what has happened since Starmer brought out his threat of a mandatory use of digital ID, that's got a lot of people walking up to what's happening, and they have made the connections with this single unique identifier being digital ID for kids and the data collection there. And really, parents need help to do that. And then, if you get them thinking about that, which will affect their children, and you can talk about the way that the DFE already uses their children's school information, which they probably don't know, then say to them, and look, they're even bringing in mandatory home visits off the back of the fact that they don't trust parents. Most parents know that the state doesn't trust them, and that needs getting up. So it's not just about lobbying your MP, it is getting the public to be in an outcry about what's going on. And there are a lot of people at the moment who are very worried about what's happening because it feels like the political class have severed all connections with the rest of us. So that is worthwhile. Get onto your local media. Try and talk about it on your local media. If you're doing something as home educators, local media will pick you up much easier than national media. Get out there, raise the profile, go on phone-ins and things. If you hear them discussing it, tell them, somebody's put a long thing in the chat about how different their child is now they're being educated in a much better environment than school. They don't learn to socialize in schools. They might be socialized, which is a different thing, pushed into the government's mold. So you can do things, and I'll just add in my usual one, talk to your local councillor as well, because they will feed back into whatever party they're in. And if your local councillor or your MP isn't your political favourite colour of rosette, hold your nose, be nice to them, and connect with them.
I like that. I like that. Hold your nose. Yes. We have to do what needs to be done. As per Randall's earlier comment about amendments and so on, we want to address the amendments that have been added since it left the House of Commons, particularly. So raise those with your MPs. Are you aware this is what's been happening in the House of Lords? That this is what they've introduced.
I think it could be stronger than that. You could say you're probably not aware what's been added in the House of Lords.
Yeah, and make them realize they need to go and look it up. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So once again, please remember we are live every Friday at the moment at 8 p.m. So that is, what a standard thing. So if you don't want to miss these updates, you can subscribe to our Substack, where all of this that we've discussed tonight and more will come into your inbox every Monday morning, so that you don't miss out on what's been said. This is really, really important, because a lot of people miss things that come up on the group. They just pass you by because of Facebook's algorithms and so on. So please, if you subscribe to the Substack, you will be kept updated on everything that we're sharing, and you will be kept in the loop. Anyway, I think that's everything for tonight. I know, guys, I know it's hard. I know we're all struggling and it feels really overwhelming, but as I said, not time to give up yet. Keep trying, keep telling more people, keep spreading the word, and just keep pushing forward. And if you're of the praying variety, you can always pray for that big disaster in Parliament as well, that earthquake in Parliament, or the political earthquake, I think you said, Randall. Stranger things have happened, and sometimes help comes from unexpected places. So don't give up yet. And thank you, Randall.
Just one thing to add about Parliament very quickly. Yeah. We've no idea what will happen if Starmer has to resign.
Yeah.
What will happen to the bill? It will all go down to whoever the new Prime Minister is.
Yeah, it doesn't go away.
It may go away. but the agenda will still be there, and the DFE will be back pushing for it. It may do, it may carry on.
We may just get a reprieve, but the thing is that we need to be changing hearts and minds in the long term. By continuing to talk about it and letting people know that we are home educating and it's working well for us and it's positive, because these negative stories are actually just a tiny, tiny percentage, and they want to legislate for that tiny percentage. So yeah, keep on, guys, and thank you so much for joining us and for your comments and for engaging. Have a good weekend, and let's see what next week brings, eh?